All right. So it is 2:30. So let's go ahead and kick it off. I want to take time to thank you, everybody, for joining today, taking time out of your busy schedule to really learn about Acumatica and the construction edition and really how that can add value to your business. So we are expecting a good amount of folks to join. And just a couple of housekeeping notes. So everybody will be on mute. And then we will have a Q&A session at the end. We do encourage you to type your questions into the chat box, and we'll field those questions at the end. But really, again, thanks for your time today. I think you'll find this webinar very valuable and hopefully a lot of good takeaways. And keep in mind that we will be sending a recording of this to you one-off following the webinar. So would love to set up some one-off calls more tailored to your business following this webinar, if you do see the value. So I'll go ahead and kick it off with that said. So let's take a look at today's agenda. So, first we're going to do some introductions and an overview. Really, the meat of the presentation is going to be led by Mike, where he'll be demoing the Acumatica construction platform. And then lastly, again, we'll open it up for Q&A. But again, throughout the presentation, if anything pops up, any questions, we definitely encourage you to enter that into the chat, and then we'll field those at the end. So just talking about introduction. So my name is Jason Fedell. I'm the Vice President of Sales here at Confianz Global. I've been here now for about 4.5 years. Time flies. And have been in software sales for about 14 years now. And then we have Mike as well, who is our Senior Solutions Engineer, and then our CEO, Anup Menon. So without further ado, I just want to talk briefly about Confianz at a high level. Again, I'm not going to bore you to death by PowerPoint. There's only about 4 or 5 here. But we've been in business for about 15 years now. We really started, within the ERP world, and have really come to really a full stack IT shop. So we do ERP implementation, mobile app development, website development. We do have about 80 active clients, and we are a certified Acumatica partner. But one key takeaway is the retention rate. So typically when a customer comes on board with us, they stay on board. We have about a 98% customer retention rate. And most of our customers have been with us 6, 7, 8 years now. So really speaks volumes about, us as a company. And really, we view this as a partnership, not just, a simple transaction. So just a couple of things to highlight about our company at a high level. And really the reason that we chose to partner with Acumatica, it's a couple of reasons, actually. It's the dashboards that Mike will be showing here in a moment. You'll get to see everything in real time. This is extremely valuable for people who they want to keep everything on track. They want to monitor everything in real time, whether that's PMs, supervisors, subcontractors. It essentially just helps allow everybody to be on the same page. On top of that, it really is scalable. It does grow with your business as your business grows. And really, at the end of the day, it's a very future-proof. So, if you're a small business, if you're a medium-sized business, as you continue to grow, the system will flex and grow with your business as well. On top of that, again, on the theme of transparency, no matter who you are in the organization, you can have full transparency with these real-time data through these dashboards. So if you're a CFO, a CEO, and you want insight into this information, Mike will do a great job of highlighting that for you. And then lastly, there's a lot of companies out there these days who are using disparate systems, whether it's Excel, whether it's 5 or 6 different other softwares. This really helps bring everything under one roof, really providing that one centralized systems to handle all of your needs. So that's a large reason of why we decided to partner with Acumatica. And, I think you'll see the value here in a moment once I hand the steering wheel over to Mike to hop into the dashboards and so forth. So without further ado, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it over to Mike.
Great. All right. Let me know if you can see my screen now. I
Yep.
wouldn't want everyone to use their imagination for the whole
Yep.
demo.
You are good, Mike.
Great. Awesome. So we're going to spend a lot of time today going through the dashboard functionality that's present in Acumatica. And you might be thinking, and I know Jason, as we were talking about this, we were like, you asked me the question, like, everyone's got dashboards these days, right? Like, why are you going to spend an hour going through what dashboards can do for you? And you're right. I mean, everyone kind of does have dashboards, but it's more than just like a sales tool that seems impressive but isn't that used highly. So where I wanted to start today before I get into the dashboards that you see before you and the different applications that lie within is to talk about kind of the history of reporting for construction companies and where we are currently today. So back in the 80s and 90s, when the first construction accounting solutions were coming to market, they didn't have dashboards really at all. It was, I mean, it was the 80s and 90s, right? Like computing has changed a lot since then. So you'd have raw reports, you'd have some stuff in Microsoft DOS, and as systems got more and more mature, the ability to run reports that were formatted in a particular way was the predominant way in which people would get data out of their systems. One such tool is Crystal Reports. I'm sure probably a solid half of you on the call have at least heard of Crystal Reports. Maybe you actually look at a Crystal report today to like make sense of some of your financials or a WIP report or whatever. But that was a lot of the way that data was rendered and reviewed. But then as it got easier, as technology changed and it got easier to export data from a system, people would dump that into Excel, use some of the dashboard widgets to start making sense of their data. But at that point, the data itself wasn't live per se. You'd export it at a snapshot and then massage it the way that you wanted. Oftentimes, it might have been formatted in weird ways with merged tables that you had to reformat and unmerge. And so like, yeah, you could get dashboards and graphical representation of your data, but it was a pain to get there and it was static once it was there with really no way to update it. As we moved into the late 90s and early 2000s, we started seeing graphical representation built into a number of products. So, something that's got a strong SQL database, they would write dashboard functionality on top of it so that you could go in and look at something like this that would show your AR aging summary and see what was current versus what's over 30, over 60, etc. So it was really good for visualizing data in terms of just getting a sense without having to read a report of where the company stood. But there's two really main factors that made this not as effective as it might seem like it is from the top of just a glance. One, this is not customizable. You can't go in and say, yeah, I kind of would prefer to see this a different way. If you wanted to see it a different way, you were kind of out of luck. If you cared about things related to project profitability instead of AR aging, again, you were kind of out of luck. You were at the mercy of what people in a development center designed and thought would be applicable for general businesses. And if it worked for you, great. If not, at least it was something, right? So it not being customizable is one aspect that would make it kind of difficult to really be used by a lot of business owners, executives, project managers, etc. But also, it's just graphical representation. I know this is just a snapshot, but if we were looking at this live software, I wouldn't be able to drill down any further into this than I am right now by just looking at this image. So between those two, not being able to investigate further based on what's represented at a high level and not being able to interact with it at all and or change it at all is one of the reasons that dashboards have gotten a billing of being kind of all glitz and no substance behind them. One thing that people have done to kind of make up for that is, as data's gotten easier to extract, they've used tools like Microsoft Power BI and Azure and analytics tools to extract data from their SQL Server, and then blend it on an analytics tool in a way that's live so that it can be graphically represented. And that's a pretty cool option. I guess you guys probably weren't expecting me to just Google something here during the middle of the demo, but here we are. Full of surprises on a Wednesday. But this is a good option, but it's not native to the system. And so you're going to be viewing these reports outside of the system anyways. So it's not as helpful as having them within the system where you could really drill down, because it would, although it's customizable, it would not be able to then access further down in the system if you find something you want to investigate. So Jason, that's why you asked me why dashboards are anything more than a sales tool. And the answer is, in Acumatica, things are a lot different.
Right. Are you going to have to prove that to me, Mike?
Well, I've got a plan for that. So what I can do to start is to show you that dashboards can help your team be more productive, but they also can just help you like keep a finger on the pulse of your company. There's a huge amount of flexibility in what is present here. And so where I'm looking right now is at like a CFO level dashboard. This is something that is going to really help the CFO of this demo company keep their finger on the pulse of what's happening with this company. And the beautiful part of this, that is in contrast to the history lesson that you didn't know you wanted and maybe you didn't want, is that I can hit this design button right here and go in and add a widget to this. I can add charts. I can add data tables from the database of Acumatica. I can embed things. I can have a KPI, which are those tiles that you saw at the top. I can embed, or I can have a pivot table, and I can even embed Power BI into Acumatica if you wanted to do that. As much as that analytics tool is really cool, like I said, it was external, but if you wanted to make it internal, you could actually use the Power BI tile to that effect, and not just report on data from Acumatica, but if you've got, I don't know, Procore, for instance, or like a safety third-party solution, and you wanted to blend the data in an external source, you could do that through Power BI, but then you could always view the results of that here on a dashboard. So it's kind of the best of the both worlds from that Power BI perspective. But as I said, when I hit design, the best part about this dashboard is that it wasn't someone at the office where Acumatica is headquartered in Bellevue, Washington, or maybe it's Kirkland these days, saying, oh, here's what's probably helpful and good luck if it isn't. I actually was the one that modified this dashboard heavily to see the things that are most important for me. And for this CFO persona, I've got at the top level information around cash. I've got information around payroll and personnel, and I've got project information all right here on one page. Traditionally, for a CFO to be able to find this in an older solution, you'd have to scroll through a bunch of financial statements, look at an AR aging, maybe look at a WIP report to see what I have here in terms of average WIP adjustment, backlog, all of that stuff. You're probably running a packet of 4 or 5 reports at the end of a month to glean the information that's just represented here in one place. And not just the fact that it is represented in one place, but the fact that it is, real time as well. So Acumatica doesn't, it's not like a once a month thing where the CFO could log in to see this stuff. This could be the homepage where the CFO logs in and sees all of that information right at their fingertips to then be able to act on, well, okay, my cash on hand is nice, but my AP is overdue is something I need to work on. By the way, I would deal with that problem of having 170 million cash on hand. That would be a nice personal problem to have. But anyway, so you could see that it's real time, it's accessible, it blends data from multiple different sources. Spoiler alert, by the way, I'm not covering it later, but there's payroll in Acumatica as well. So you can do payroll out of the box in here, and have real-time job costing for your labor. If you want to know more about that, certainly reach out to us. That's a really cool feature of Acumatica. But all of this in one place is a huge benefit. And then one, I could design it, like I said. For two, I can drill into it. So total AR, that's going to take me to a list of all of the customers that are in the system. And then I can use the sorting and filtering to find my most problem customers. And then I can drill into that customer in what I call drill down inception, to see the entire list of their invoices. And I can even go to the invoice record if I want to send it out or pay it right from here. So that actionability, the ability to drill in to a dashboard item and find out what is important and get an answer to what's going on with that, is something that Acumatica allows for out of the box. And that is a departure from the legacy, no flexibility, no drill down ability, with a lot of the other systems that have been around in the construction space for a while. Now, with that said, this is a little bit of a cool like nugget. If you're a CFMA member on the call here, so we have the ability to, if you're integrated with, or if you're a member of the CFMA, you have the ability to subscribe to their benchmarking feature, where you can actually have an embedded CFMA dashboard in the system. Obviously, I have a static screenshot. I haven't submitted any fake benchmarks. I think that'd skew everyone's results across the country. But we also have the ability to see like ratios and how you compare with your peers, and honestly, people in the same industry as you and all of that. So both keep your finger on the pulse, but also compare with peers in your industry to see how you stack up.
No, that's great. It seems pretty high level, Mike. If you mind going a little deeper.
Man, you're hard to please, Jason. Man, it'd be my pleasure. But I did notice a question that popped up, right, that I wanted to address. It looks like
Sure.
Brian asked about the Sage 300 dashboard. I tried to hide that. I wasn't sure if you could see that it was Sage, but Brian asked if that means that we've migrated customers from Sage to Acumatica before. And yes, that's actually, so I used to be an end user of Sage 300 CRE, very familiar with it. It's a very common product that folks will migrate from, a pretty easy one. The data structure is pretty consistent from Sage 300 to Acumatica, in terms of you already have a cost code structure. You probably already have a WIP report in Sage. You're probably doing cost to complete and those types of things. So all of those things are make it pretty easy to migrate. And then I'm kind of stealing your thunder here, Jason, by reading the second question, but Brian's got another one here. So he says, showstopper for us is having multiple contracts per job number / project number. We have multiple trades working on the same project, and each trade has their own contract. That's something that's doable in Acumatica. There's a couple of different ways to accomplish that. I would assume you've got multiple entities that would be corresponding to those trades. I think it probably warrants a more deep conversation in terms of what your structure is before I answer in your case specifically, but there's a few ways to handle that. And Jeff, while we were answering Brian's question, asked, what software platforms do most of your customers come from? That's a great question. So a lot of them will come from QuickBooks if they've started to outgrow QuickBooks and have hit 10 million in revenue and want some better profitability reporting and to see if they've made or lost money on a job. A lot of folks also, though, will be coming from some more legacy on-prem type solutions that are looking for something a little bit more flexible. Now, I'm not saying that these are bad products by any means, but they are ones that people will tend to migrate from. Sage, as Brian had asked about, Sage 100 contractors, Sage 300 CRE. I'm seeing a lot of computeries recently, Vista Viewpoint, Vista Spectrum, occasionally a CMIC migration, Explorer Eclipse, Jonas products, both Premier and Enterprise. And I'm even seeing people migrate from Foundation if they reach a point, like, again, kind of over 10 to 15 million, where it starts to make sense. That's kind of an abbreviated list on the fly, but those would be some pretty common ones besides QuickBooks that people would be looking to move to Acumatica from. Okay. A little bit of an impromptu detour to answer your questions, but I always prefer to talk about the stuff that people on the call care about rather than the stuff I care to see. So anyways, a little improv jazz here, Jason. So I'll get to your question about seeing things a little bit more detailed.
Sure thing, Mike. Appreciate it.
So when I click on my project analysis dashboard, this is actually going to take me to a screen where I can look at all of my projects in one place. And that could be me going in and looking at all these projects by a single project manager. That could be me here looking at by project type or by an individual project. So what I have the ability to do is see in my business to business type of projects how I'm performing, or in my B2C type consumer projects, it looks like my gross profit percentage is a little bit worse for wear than it is on the B2B side. So it's great because it's analytical. And this is something that you can, customize in terms of project type. Would typically, for like a general contractor, be maybe the type of project they're engaged in. Is it a hospital? Is it education? Is it commercial? Is it residential? For a sub, for other people, it might be region. For like utilities, it might be sewer versus water. But we can create custom project tags and then use those, fields that don't exist in the system natively to filter a whole project dashboard by in one fell swoop. So you don't have to really have the system match everything you need from out of the box. Like, we can add these fields and then use them in really powerful ways to analyze, things like profitability. And it's not just high level analytics. It's also task related stuff. So if I wanted to go in here and see expiring compliance on the projects that I'm working on, I could drill into that, or my approvals. Or if I wanted to go in and see tasks that are due to me, I could assign and receive and complete tasks within Acumatica based on the projects that have been assigned. We can have, as you see, project manager here. This might be kind of like director of operations or CFO or controller again, that wants to see across multiple project managers how they're performing. But you could also have the system look dynamically at the user that's logged in and automatically pare down the dashboard by them. So it's a really cool feature for those purposes, such that you have the ability to have one dashboard created. But then if you create a filter for the users to log in and you've got 12 project managers, now you've just created 12 project manager dashboards by creating one and applying a dynamic filter to it. So it'll help everyone see what's on their plate. It'll give them the ability to see information around like what change orders are open for them and what RFIs are open, etc. It does a really good job of helping people to see what's on their plate and managing multiple projects in one fell swoop. I know there's a lot of point solutions out there, like a Procore, for example, that does project management. And that's a really great tool for doing project management for an individual project. But where Acumatica has a little bit more of a granular look, I can see gross profit, estimated completion, cost to date, etc., across multiple projects at once, whereas Procore's and some of those point solutions are a little bit more one project at a time. This will group them and give you a little bit more of a narrow view of multiple projects at one time.
No, thanks for running through that, Mike. What about for people who want to accomplish tasks day to day per se?
Oh man, there's nothing in the system for people that want to do tasks day to day. I'm sorry to disappoint you, Jason. I'm just kidding, obviously. So, like this AP clerk, is a really good example of one. If you want someone to be able to log in and just see like what is on their plate on a given day, it's not necessarily financial information. Another really good example of this is the construction project manager. This information is not necessarily like margin and profit and backlog and remaining estimates. It's, hey, what bills do I have to pay today? And I can click into that and start my day by looking at the bills that I have to pay. Side note, if the AP clerk looks like they probably have 112 unreleased documents in prior months, maybe time to look into a bookkeeping service for this particular company to clean some of this stuff up. But one of the cool things about Acumatica is each user can define their own homepage. So we could even have an AP clerk persona that's got their own homepage that will give them the ability to look at the things that are their responsibilities and immediately know, what they should be prioritizing in a given day. And the same can be said for this construction project manager over here. This is going to give that PM a sense of what tasks are overdue, how many unprofitable projects. Boy, this company is just a mess between the AP clerk and the project manager with unprofitable projects. But the other thing that's really cool about this, beyond just having these tiles that you can create, is the ability to go in here and set thresholds for what constitutes good, bad, and ugly. And you can use different colors to draw your eye to that. I've heard a metric before that says that it takes about 22.5 minutes for someone when they walk away from their computer to refocus on something that they left when they walked away initially. That's, if you walk away from your computer more than a couple of times a day, that leads to kind of some unproductivity. And so for a user to be able to look at a dashboard and have the dashboard tell them what is on their plate for a given day is something that really will help them refocus on the stuff that's at hand that they should be focusing on, essentially, and using that as the basis for starting their day or going back to something that is important for them. It really will make sure that you make sure that none of your responsibilities will fall through the cracks.
Gotcha. No, very well said, Mike. And I know people, are afraid of change. There's adoption risk and things of that nature. What about people who may be resistant to change in technology?
It's like folks like my mom.
Yeah.
I've got a dashboard exactly for that type of person as well. Here's my AP homepage, and don't show her this icon, will you, Jason? I don't think she would be too amused. But
like the cane there.
yeah, my mom is a really sweet lady. She's a great cook. She's very empathetic, but she's not good at technology. And even she could look at a screen like this and know what is supposed to happen, right? I've had people look at that AP clerk dashboard, which is pretty similar to this, really all things considered, the information that's rendered here versus the stuff that's on this homepage. And people will look at this and say, that's too busy. I'm intimidated by that. I don't want to look at all those bright colors and all of that. My mom would be one of those people. The AP dashboard is this AP homepage is something that would mitigate that issue. All this is, believe it or not, I just made a PowerPoint with images from icons from PowerPoint and uploaded that image to Acumatica. And it's not, you're probably thinking that's so stupid. It's just an image. You can't do anything with it. Not exactly, right? I can actually click into these different images. That pay AP bill is actually going to take me to a screen that will pay, AP bills, and the aging report will take me to the AP aging report. So, this particular application of it is in place for people that are focused on AP, but any persona you could think of, you could create something like this for. You could even have this be like a flow chart of responsibilities, and each one of those items in the flow chart could be clickable. So this is a really great way to make Acumatica accessible to someone that might be intimidated by new technology. I've even seen people that are coming off of something they're very used to look at something like this And someone that's change adverse would look at something like this and say, you know what? I could do this. This makes sense. So we've got flexible tools and flexible ways to keep things really simple for folks that might be a little bit more intimidated, like my dear old mom.
Well, I guess I was wrong on the dashboards, Mike. How else can Acumatica help?
Yeah, serves you right for judging me on wanting to go with dashboards. Let that be a lesson to you.
Lesson
No,
learned.
yeah. So if you're still doing like a lot of stuff in spreadsheets and you there's specific ways that Acumatica can help beyond dashboards. So having financial statements that will be produced in the system here is a really nice thing. I can go into this rolling 12-month P&L and see information around this financial statement. And you can see it's all drillable. So financial statements will be something I could then drill into. And if I've got multiple different entities, like what was it? Brian who commented, Brian, if you've got multiple different entities, not only from a GL perspective, can you drill in and actually find the information that makes up that financial statement, but you could go in here by group and then look at it a specific one of those companies or a grouping of those companies. So if you've got a family of companies, one that does aggregates, another that does site work, another that does equipment holding company or whatever, even like a service company, you could break those all out as companies or branches. And then kind of like I was talking about in the dashboard where you apply a filter to the user that's logged in and thus create 12 dashboards by creating one. You could do that with a financial statement where you create 100 financial statements by creating one and then applying a grouping that shows it by entity, but then of course being able to consolidate. Even if it's not entity, this could be by account class, it could be by sub-account or dimension, it could be by branch, it could be by profit center. I mean, there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how you can view these financial statements as a way to really help you make sense of and get a good finger on the pulse from a different perspective, not just from a dashboarding perspective. And really, that's really kind of financial oriented, not as much like job cost reporting. And I've got the ability in here to do some stuff that has been really painful for a lot of people when it comes to their job cost reporting and WIP schedules that happen in a given month. I'm going to show a couple of key features around that and then finish by showing you the WIP so you can kind of see how it all comes together. But when I go into my cost projections, I've got a cost to complete worksheet that a PM could go into. And the beautiful thing about the cost projection sheet is I can adjust anything from this column to this one as long as mode is auto for all of these lines. I can go in here and say, you know what? We actually came in under budget on that, so I'm going to change the percentage to 100. But in this particular one, we were a little over budget, so that's 100. Or I could go in and say, my projected quantity to completion went from 250 to 300, and you can adjust that from a quantity perspective, which will affect everything else. So, these cost projections are great, and then I could actually remove these from hold and put them through an approval map so that the controller or CFO has eyes on them before they're released. And then, from a potential change order perspective, I hear people all the time ask, hey, our customer, like our GC, if we're a sub or the owner asked for us to do some additional work outside of the original scope, and we are going to do it because we're going to get a change order on it, but it's going to throw off our WIP because we don't have an approved change order yet. And we've already started to do some cost on the, we've already started to incur some cost on that change order. So how it's going to throw the WIP off because I don't have that in the system. Well, Acumatica has a way to handle that as well in the change orders within this project, which, by the way, I don't want to just blaze past that. change orders, invoices, commitments, change requests, the cost budget, your schedule of values. It's all here in the project screen. You don't have to go from multiple different screen to multiple different screen to set up a project like I used to as an end user of a couple different products. It's all right here. But the change orders that are on hold, the beautiful thing about this is I go to my balances tab, I've got potential change order amounts versus budgeted. Potential is showing me the amounts from all change orders that are on hold in this environment. These are a great representation of, hey, we've got extra work or a scope change, but we haven't actually gotten a signed change order yet. You could put it in the system here, and it'll be on your cost budget and your revenue budget as well. But then as I go to my WIP, by the way, I have the ability to choose to include those or exclude them from my WIP report. So in this case, if I have that happening, I can definitely include them. And I'm going to go ahead and do this based on a cost projection. With the revenue recognition rules changing a couple of years ago, I've been demoing Acumatica for about 5 years. People only really 5 years ago wanted it by cost budget, like the most current budget for their WIP. And nowadays, 9 out of 10 contractors talk to me and say, we need the WIP to be based on cost projection, not the current cost budget. And so those two elements will keep you from having to export the data from your WIP report into Excel to massage it further based on things that aren't in the system. And it'll make it much, much easier to do your month-end close where you're doing your WIP schedule. So I'll actually run the WIP report here. This is a WIP report that has my contract amounts and estimated cost. You'll notice here I've got all my active projects for this WIP. And Brian, I kind of feel like I've been picking on you, but you asked a couple of questions, so I'm talking to you specifically. Again, I don't know if you've got multiple entities, but one of the really cool things about this WIP is I can run the WIP for all companies at once. I could run it for just one. So if you want to make your WIP adjustment entry for each company, you could absolutely do that in Acumatica and run multiple different WIP reports out of the box without any massaging of data whatsoever, so that you can make that adjustment. But here's all of my projects: contract amounts, estimated cost, commitments that are in the system here, the projected cost at completion that I was showing you before, the actual costs that have come in, billings to period, revenue that's been recognized, and then the critical part, besides revenue backlog, my over-under billings present right here. Now, you guys probably noticed by now that Acumatica is in a web browser. And this is one of the really cool features about it being in a web browser. Making a WIP adjustment is a difficult thing if you've got to be in a report that's in the screen in one place and then looking at a journal entry in another. But I can actually have a separate window open right here. And I'm sure everyone on the call's got at least 2 monitors. Probably some of you have 3. Have your WIP report open in one screen, go into financials and do your journal transaction in the other. It'll be really easy to just look at that bottom line here and say, yep, there's my WIP adjustment. And I think the other thing that's really cool about this is the fact that you can make that an auto reversing entry as well. So if you want to start the WIP over in a current do it month over month and start fresh at the beginning of the next month, you have the ability to do that. That's what the auto reversing would allow you to do without any manual looking into the cost and excess of billings GL account and having to do a negative entry to start over. Now, what's really cool about this is the ability to go further, right? When I look at my cost and excess of billings and see 25 million cost and excess of billings, kind of not that good. I can drill into the Huntsville Resort and Spa. That's going to take me to a WIP detail that's broken down by the different phases of this project. So I've got a WIP detail across every aspect of this job, so that I can see, kind of where this has gone wrong and run off of the rails before before I was, the next month I can catch up on the billings essentially, or whatever it is that I need to do. So like the whip detail will actually help with that type of thing. And you can even, as I mentioned from the dashboards, you can drill down, but you can see even from these types of reports you can. So all that said, some people kind of want a whip report still in Excel, given all of this stuff. Easy enough, right? I can export it to Excel, pull it up, and then, you'll see as I drag it over to this screen here, pretty clean format, no weird merges. Everything's pretty straightforward. All of these reports, all of these screens in Acumatica can be exported with a ton of ease. So it's a very easy thing to be able to do if you do insist on continuing to do your whip in Excel. We even have some tools to keep the data live if you want. Acumatica's got something called OData that will keep that information up to date at all times. And yeah, it'll make it very easy for it'll make it really easy for the whip to be opened and current if you do have some custom calculations that you prefer to keep in Excel for whatever reason. There's another really great tool called Velixo that does a pretty similar thing. You could do estimates there. You can do whip reports. You could do, cost to complete if you want. Anything you're most comfortable with in Excel, you can actually just integrate that and turn Excel into an Acumatica module. I know Jason, me and you have explored that with some folks in the past that really, with the my mom type of persona that don't like change. If they're already in Excel, right? Why would people want to get out of Excel, right? It's the reason they want to get out of Excel is because the data isn't live and because it won't affect the data in Acumatica. But if we have a tool, and that's what Velixo is, to turn what you're already doing in Excel into an Acumatica module that will talk to and overwrite and update the information, and it will always be current. That's another change management, make my mom's life easier type of solution that will make it easier to sort of like slide into Acumatica, give your controller, your CFO a happier and easier life, and not disrupt the apple cart, especially with like estimators if they've got a beloved spreadsheet that they've been using for a ton of years. So with that all said, I have one other aspect of what Acumatica can do, especially given if folks are coming off of a system that is not built for job cost accounting that I want to touch on, and then we can open for questions. So the question was posed earlier, what systems do people come off of? And most of the ones that I mentioned, what people are looking for is like an update in technology, but they're getting decent job cost reporting and profitability analysis currently. With the system that they're on, it's just maybe like a little bit difficult to get that data. QuickBooks and kind of non-specific construction specific solutions are different than that though. And Acumatica will make lives easier for those types of users that are using something that is not construction specific. And I'll mention a couple of key ways. One is obviously the piece that we're looking at right now, right? A whole bunch of construction specific reporting built out of the box here where people can see how a job is progressing. But it's more than just that. It comes down to the fact that I've got cost codes in the system, a true construction work breakdown structure. If you're using something that isn't kind of built for construction, you're probably able to do things at a certain level. And I'll show you what I mean. At the certain level that you can typically look at profitability, for instance, in those scenarios, would be at the level where you can see labor, revenue, sub, material, and other. So at this level, you can kind of see how your job is doing typically in that type of environment. You might even be able to do it by phase potentially, but the cost code catalog is what makes you able to go even more granular. So here at the cost budget level, you can see that as I group by task, Here's all the different phases of this project. But then when I look by cost code, here's all of the different items that it's going to take to accomplish each of those phases or scopes. And because this is pulling from a cost code catalog, it's going to be consistent from project to project. So what that ends up meaning, because it's consistent from project to project, is the fact that you're going to be able to see like profitability on cost codes and on phases and get to that level of granularity. You can see not just did the project make or lose money, but where did the project make or lose money. And that, as folks are scaling, is a really compelling story to tell. That's, honestly, like from an acquisition perspective, being able to tell that story to a potential buyer of a company is critical. And, something like QuickBooks or something else that's a cash basis or can be a cash basis accounting system, that hurts evaluation when it comes time for acquisitions and to have a company be bought. Acumatica is accrual basis. It's true GAAP accounting. So your financials are going to look a lot better, and you're going to get a better valuation by being already in an accrual accounting environment than being in a cash basis system where you can't really tell if you made or lost money. So it's a more attractive acquisition target. And if that's of interest to you, selling a company before you retire or something like that, Acumatica can actually lead to a greater valuation compared to being on something that's not built for construction. In addition, little things that like retainage, if you're dealing with retainage in QuickBooks today, that's a huge nightmare. I already know that it is. Like you're going to have to do an invoice for 90% of what you'd be billing for, and then have maybe a GL code that shows retainage receivable. But then, if you have a bank or a financial institution that's asking for your AR aging with retainage, you're not going to be able to get that to them. You're going to have to do a whole bunch of manual work to do that. And Acumatica will do that out of the box. If I do AR aging by period, one of the options here is to do this detailed with retainage. And that's just a consequence of doing this, doing accounting in a system that is built for construction. You can see here as this loads up, I've got my unreleased retainage on the right-hand side just naturally, and that's what happens in a system like this. And the final piece of this before I do open it up for questions is, like, if you're working for a GC that's asking for AIA invoicing and you're in QuickBooks today, you're probably spending a lot of time actually compiling and creating that AIA. And that's something that we can do very easily by just filling out a schedule of values. And then once that schedule of values is complete, your AIA is here ready to go out of the box. So it's a very, very easy thing to do. And it's, again, a consequence of being in a true construction accounting solution. So it can help make lives easier from an end user perspective and know where your projects are profitable, but it also can increase what your company goes for if you do decide to sell. So that's kind of an unplanned spiel, Jason, but here we are. I think, is there anything else you wanted to cover before we turn to see what questions folks have?
No, I think you did a great job explaining everything. I'm definitely brought it home and ran a tight demo. So much appreciated, Mike.
Yeah, my pleasure. Are there any additional questions? I think I might have prematurely kind of answered as we were going along, but I figured it'd be fun to sort of answer questions on the fly to make sure everyone kind of had what was interesting to them be answered.
Yeah, it looks like we have one, and I believe you touched on it earlier, Mike, but it looks like, does Acumatica integrate with Procore?
Yep, Acumatica does integrate with Procore. There is a really detailed integration between Acumatica and Procore. It's probably, I think it'd be tied for first in terms of the strongest integration that Procore has out there. And here's the detail of it. It's a two-way integration, so data will push and pull from Acumatica to Procore and vice versa. And yeah, you can have your operations team, your project managers all operating in Procore, and have your finance team get reports in Acumatica. I see that all the time. What I will say about this, so Procore built and owns the integration. So if you're interested in this, we can certainly explore this a little bit further, but Procore you'd have to talk to your Procore rep about the cost associated, and they're also the folks that will stand up the integration between the two systems.
All right. And we have another question here. Does Acumatica have payroll?
Yeah, it does have payroll. It has payroll out of the box, which is great. True construction payroll as well, not just like regular payroll. And when I say true construction, unions. So I can have, if I'm dealing with unions, I can have my union locals in here, have different union pay rates and fringes. I can do prevailing wage here as well. Again, setting up labor items for prevailing wage projects and benefits that reduce the rate as well. And I have the ability to run reports in payroll. So like my prevailing wage report through Atrix will automatically populate, and I could use this to e-file taxes as well. One of the huge benefits of doing payroll in Acumatica is to be able to do this this live job costing option where you post time from the time module into a job before payroll is run. And then once payroll is run, it'll override that accrual and post the actuals with the benefits on the project fully burdened at that point. So, it's not real time in terms of to the cent, but you do have a sense of where your job cost is based on a rate that you define for the project. So you have like as up to date as possible job cost reporting even well before payroll is run. So that's a huge benefit for folks if real-time job cost is attractive. If it's not, even though there is payroll out of the box, Acumatica integrates with like 4 or 5 construction payroll providers, MITRE, Workforce Go, ADP Workforce Now. There's a new one called Lumber that I heard of recently, which I just love the name of. So there's a bunch of construction payroll solutions out there that will take care of all of this stuff as well as a third party that's plugged in.
Perfect, Mike. And it looks like we just had another question come in as well. So is there a place to get more granular look into the modules and how to process AP, payroll, etc.? Looks like they're currently utilizing Sage 300 CRE and Procore, and they're looking for a better cloud-based accounting system.
Yeah. So, I mean, there are videos on YouTube, but like the odds that would be applicable to you would be pretty limited, to be honest. I think what we would typically do is I'd be happy to give you a tailored demo that would be about 60 to 90 minutes on specific processes that you'd want to see. I think the only ask really that we would have is around an hour conversation beforehand to learn about what you're doing today. I mean, I'd know a good bit of it just because like I'm familiar. I was an end user of Sage 300 CRE for a while, but just like specifically what you're looking to get out of the system, then I can prep a tailored environment for you. We can walk through the more granular blocking and tackling and see, how big of an improvement it would be compared to what you're doing and, if it's worth exploring further. So I think reaching out to us to set that up would probably be the best way probably the most efficient way, really, to get a good sense of that. You probably could watch a few hours of YouTube videos, or you could spend an hour with us and probably get a better sense of it, more tailored for you specifically.
Absolutely. And again, just to reemphasize, we will be sending a copy of this to each of you who attended, and we'd love to set up a one-off call and explore this further if there's interest. So just wanted to put that out there as well. So expect this recording coming your way, guys. And Mike, thank you for running a tight demo as always. We appreciate you.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for the questions. I love being on a webinar where people actually have questions about stuff. It's nice that you guys were engaged. And I hope we get the chance to talk a little bit in person. It's always fun to learn about what people are doing and what they're looking to accomplish and what they want out of the new system. And yeah, I'd love to be able to talk with some of you guys a little bit more in detail.
Perfect. Well, thank you, everybody. This wraps up the presentation today, but we'll be in touch shortly and we'll give you 5 minutes back to your day. So thanks again for attending and hope you have a great day, everybody. Take care.
Bye.